Hello, my name is Rio, and my presentation topic of choice is about the increase in Asian American hate crimes in America since the pandemic started. And I will cover what the potential candidates are that cause the increase in hate crimes. For starters, hate crimes are violent crimes committed that are usually against people of a different race, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth. Unfortunately, these characteristics and races in people unintentionally motivate the hate offender just by existing, leading to unexpected verbal and physical attacks on them. According to a recent study, anti-Asian hate crimes have recently spiked at around 150% since the pandemic started. Asian hate crimes have been going unnoticed for years beyond the start of the pandemic dating back to the 1850s, whenever Chinese immigrants began filling high-demand jobs such as mining and railroads construction in America, but especially in California. It didn't take long for common racist misconception to arise that Asians were coming to steal white people's jobs. A few years later, in 1854, the California Supreme Court reinforced racism against Asian immigrants, stating that they were not permitted to give evidence in favor of or against the white person in court. It was opinionated that the Chinese were a race of people whose nature has marked itself as inferior and who are incapable of progress or intellectual development beyond a certain point. And it was thought that they had no right to swear away the life of a citizen. Here are some examples of how racial formation played a role, and Asian Americans were mistreated in our history. The People versus the Hall in 1854. Going off what I had mentioned a moment ago, George Hall influenced institutionalized racism when he murdered a Chinese man named Ling Xing, whose witnesses were Asian. However, there was already an active law limiting blacks and Indians from testifying in jury. George Hall didn't think that his opponent's Chinese witnesses should be allowed to witness in the jury due to being that of a different race and not white. His thoughts influenced many, and that's when the California law was then reinforced. The Chinese Massacre of 1871. This is just one of the Asian-related massacres that occurred when a white man got caught between the crossfire of Chinese rival groups, and more than 500 white and Hispanic rioters surrounded the Chinese community in Los Angeles, and at least 17 Chinese men and boys were executed and hung throughout the streets. Eventually, 8 of the rioters were found and charged for manslaughter. Then later, their punishments were overlooked and they were set free. The San Francisco Plague Outbreak. In 1900, there was an outbreak of the bubonic plague in San Francisco. The first victim they found with the plague was a Chinese immigrant, even though they believed it came off of an Australian ship. His whole Asian community was to be blamed for, and eventually Chinatown was surrounded by police forces doing house searches, destroying property, and keeping all Asians from exiting and entering, and only allowing white residents to go in and out. This event set off a racist invasion towards Asians, which is slightly relevant to that of today. So, might I ask, due to the circumstances of the current spike in racism towards Asians, what is the main factor that plays a role within the recent Asian hate crimes of 2020 and 2021? There had been countless incidents since the coronavirus pandemic started back in March 2020 of Asians receiving verbal hate and even physical hate, especially in the recent weeks where you hear about innocent elderly Asian women being attacked on the streets, to a tragic massacre targeting Asians that occurred in multiple nail salons in the Midwest. Unfortunately, it became the normal news this past year to see an Asian who had been a victim of a racist hate crime. According to my research, I had found data gathered by the California State University Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism. There was almost a 150% increase in Asian hate crimes in the year 2020 alone. General hate crimes nationwide due to race significantly declined by 7% in 2020. However, attacks against Asians rose, mostly in cities. This is likely due to the coronavirus pandemic, which started in early 2020 in Wuhan, China. However, it was almost like the hate crimes kept being fed throughout the year. Natural human response, or are we pointing fingers? The Asian American rights advocates pointed fingers to the former US President Donald Trump for blaming China for the virus and referring to the coronavirus with terms such as the Chinese virus and the Wuhan virus, which likely created a social impact on the Midwest of racist Americans to target Asians. Whether it was an unintentional and harmless term stating that the virus came directly from China, it is still likely that this is one of the high factors that fed the recent hate crimes in 2020, according to my research. Even if it's society's natural response to put blame on one's country or citizen, Americans performing the hate crimes targeted all types of Asians in America, not just Chinese, which makes this case even more about racism, if race is defined as the ethnicity and appearance of a person. For my interview, I asked two of my friends about their thoughts on the recent spike of anti-Asian hate crimes. Okay, so why do you think hate crimes occur?
So, personally, I think that hate crimes occur as a lack of understanding the differences between oneself and a person of different ethnicity, cultural background, beliefs, and so forth. I'd also say that it's a possibility to occur based on the immediate judgment of a person, whereas it's quicker to make assumptions based off of society stereotypes than it is to get to know that individual person, regardless of their appearance and their beliefs.
I agree. The term hate crimes, though, is quite a loaded and controversial term, and I believe it needs to be defined before I can adequately answer. I personally define hate crimes as any crime that is a crime regardless of race, gender, sexuality, or ideology, but in this particular case, done deliberately and intentionally to express their hatred for a person, people group, place, or ideology. That being said, with that definition, I think hate crimes occur due to ignorance, which often leads to fear, and that mixture never leads to a simple or emotionally healthy response. I also cannot claim that pure malice is never the cause of hate crime, but I do believe that pure malice is very rare in general.
Okay, so according to a recent research, there is a 150% increase in Asian American hate crimes in America since the pandemic started. Donald Trump consistently referred to the coronavirus as the Chinese virus and the Kung flu since the beginning. Do you think that had something to do with the rise in hate crimes? If so, how? And if not, what are the concluding factors that you think play a role?
That's a good question. First, I'd assume that the definition of the term hate crimes in that statistic is different than the definition I stated previously. The definition here is probably something closer to offensiveness, prejudice, or racism, though I am only guessing in ignorance. And on Trump's title for the virus, throughout human history, most diseases have been named or at least nicknamed after its country and or animal of origin. So that name was likely inevitable. I do, however, believe that his use of that specific title probably aided in the negative outlook on the Chinese and subsequently, due to American ignorance, all Asian peoples. That being said, there were a lot more reasons and avenues that people come to their negative conclusions. So I would not expect much difference had Trump not done as he did. I believe what has happened was a natural human response, though both emotionally and logically immature.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with that. So generally, whenever I heard Trump refer to the new virus at the time as the Chinese virus, I didn't necessarily think of it as a racist term that would affect society in a drastic way. But instead, I just understood it as the virus came from China, so it would make sense that he would refer to it in that way. However, after the virus got its official name and he continued to use it to refer to the coronavirus, I can see how that would, whether it be intentional or not, group together Asian people and the coronavirus in one's mind and leaving it easier for people to, out of ignorance, feel empowered or superior by pinning the blame of who is at fault for the virus on one country or racial group, potentially leading to an increase in hate crimes towards Asians. However, I cannot say that I think it would be much different if he had used other terms, because I do believe that it did play a role, but it's not the main source. And going off of what Austin said, I think that it's unfortunate, but a natural human response to this global incident. Yeah.
As we know, many Asian Americans identify themselves as Americans because it's where they were born and raised and all they know. That being said, racial formation was formed into the white society of American history, so it's not uncommon for whites to differentiate Asian Americans from themselves, unintentionally or not. Even though they're no different than that of a white person who was born and raised in America, and yet the treatment they receive is drastically different, resulting in racial inequality. This is all based on current events. So what is the US going to do about it? Recently, President Joe Biden stated, our silence is complicity. We cannot complicit. We have to speak out. We have to act. And it is on all of us together to make it stop. Condemning an end to the Asian hate. Asian American communities are urging Americans to be allies with them to end this streak of racism. They ask that you speak out if you witness a hate crime or incident and to report the hate crime to the police, because because according to Asian American community leaders, an incident you experienced or witnessed can help bring greater awareness and will strengthen the chance of crime are being prosecuted. I think it is crucial that we as individuals continue to share stories and resources to make aware the hardship that Asian Americans are facing. Raising awareness to your community increases support, knowledge, and can reach for more mindsets to find better solutions for this issue. Generally, the point of making awareness is to increase concern and society creating a positive image on better behavior. So raising awareness raising awareness and checking upon your Asian peers is the most realistic approach to take as an individual or community. It's a given answer that, based on my research, the coronavirus pandemic was the main guilty cause to the recent spike in anti-Asian hate crimes. However, because of how race was socially constructed upon society, I think the human response to the new virus at the time was inevitably going to happen, whether it was fed by the media and leaders or not. Given the racism history on Asians I had mentioned earlier, America has improved with equality laws. However, I can't necessarily say that America has gotten any better towards their Asian Americans due to how it was constructed on society, and can only hope that society will find a way to treat all individuals fairly in the future. Thank you for watching.